Welcome to The Audible, presented by Trader Joe's. I'm Stuart Mandel, joined, as always, by Bruce Feldman and Ralph Russo, though Ralph has been absent quite a bit lately. He is back. He was in Buffalo for the NCAA tournament. Got a lot of stuff to get to in this episode, guys. Some details emerged late last week about the Kyle Whittingham Utah divorce, and it was messy. Bruce is going to introduce us to a freak offensive lineman prospect from Ireland who has blown up the recruiting world. President Trump weighed in on Army Navy. And there was an interesting event over the weekend that is not necessarily college football, but football related, where a team of NFL players played a flag football game against a team of guys who could be in the Olympics. And it did not go well for Tom Brady and Joe Burrow and all those guys. But first of all, guys, how's your bracket?
I'm leading my family. I only do one bracket. Like I wasn't in your pool. I only do one pool, and it's just myself, my wife, and my daughter. And right now, I have a small lead over my daughter after a couple of days of me spent in Buffalo watching rather uninspiring pod up there.
I did not do a bracket this year. My son did one, did two for our family or whatever. I think he's doing okay. It's a big pool he's in. But it's interesting to hear your child screaming at the TV and screaming at certain people like he's got the house payment on the line or whatever. So, Stu, are you doing better? Stu, are you doing better than you normally do? How are you doing this?
Yeah. So I feel like I was thinking about it. My first bracket was when I was 10. And I'm now 50, so probably 40 years of brackets. I've never had an opening weekend like that. Not just leading our athletic college football staff. According to ESPN, I'm in the top 99.5 percentile of all brackets. And I think it's amusing because I probably watched less regular season college basketball this year than I ever have in my whole life. Not intentionally. I love college basketball, but just life got busy. So, of course, that's the year that I'm kind of dominating so far, if we're being honest.
It's funny how these things work out. So when I was back in my Bristol days, the office pool, there was a kind woman who used to work at our front desk, Doris Bestwick, who kind of looked like what you'd expect, a Doris Bestwick to, she was older. She was like, kind of had a grandmotherly quality about her. And I think she won the pool my first year at ESPN. So you have all these people who are obsessed with college sports, especially college basketball and sports in general. And I think Doris might have won it 2 years in a row or something like that in the early stages. So maybe you're our Doris, Stu.
Well, we've got several sons and daughters in our athletic pool who are doing very well. Dan Uthman, our friend Dan Uthman, former managing editor of college football, his 10-year-old son is right behind me in second place. So we got a long way to go. Anything memorable from your 4 days in Buffalo, Ralph?
I got to say, not really basketball wise. Michigan State kind of did their thing. Like there wasn't like a whole lot of compelling stories coming out of Buffalo. The best thing I did in Buffalo was ate some wings. And I have to shout out a listener, Dave T, who I believe is a Sooners fan, lives up in Buffalo, reached out to me completely unsolicited, said some very nice things about my addition to the podcast, and gave me a whole list of possible options to hit when I was in Buffalo. Now, as you guys know from covering these things, you spend a lot of day at the arena. So you don't necessarily have a ton of time to like hit a bunch of spots for dinner and things along those lines. And I'm also not like a big go out guy anymore. I don't hit a lot of bars after the festivities at work. However, the thing I did was I took his number one suggestion for wings. And I hit Elmo's, a place called Elmo's, which is a dive bar, as most of them are in Buffalo. They're double dipped wings, which means they give you you can get a combination of two sauces on them. And we did who I was out with Paul Meyerberg from USA Today was up there too. We did Cajun and medium buffalo sauce. They were awesome. They were so good. So I didn't indulge in as many wing spots as I was hoping to get to, but I got to number 1 on his list, and it was a home run. So thank you, Dave, for reaching out and providing me with some suggestions. I promise when I go back up there, if I ever to get back up there again, I'll hit some of your other ones. But your number 1 was a slam dunk.
Maybe Dave T should get the Trader Joe's gift card for taking care of Ralph like that with the hospitality.
I have no problem with that. Plus, he was also very complimentary to me. So, as you know, I am a sucker for people buttering me up. So, I'll let the jury decide.
Yeah,
that
hold off on that just for
week.
now. We'll have to check the fine print, see if that's how you can get. But we always appreciate our readers and listeners. That has happened to me several times where somebody found out I was going somewhere and offered up some tips. So we really appreciate that. So we should talk college football.
Yes.
Back when Kyle Whittingham and Utah announced they were parting ways, right? It always seemed a little suspicious because there had always been this succession plan in place for years where Morgan Scalley would retire. Morgan Scalley, a longtime defensive coordinator, would take over as the head coach. And then they had like in Whittingham's contract, like a sweet little cushy, you could stick around and make almost $1 million a year and, kiss babies and all that good stuff. Well, when it came time for this moment, it was no longer Kyle Whittingham is retiring. It's that Kyle Whittingham and Utah decided to part ways, and Kyle Whittingham wants to stay in coaching. So our Chris Kamrani and some others did a FOIA for all the events around that, and boy, did it turn up a hit. So it turns out that Kyle Whittingham's agent initially informed Utah that he was not retiring and he wanted to come back and coach at Utah. And the offer that they made or that they asked for was he would get a raise to $9 million a year, which is a nice bump coming off a 10-2 season. He had been making 6.9. And then a guarantee of a $20 million NIL for the roster and $2 million for the salary pool. Mark Harlan, the AD, comes back a few days later with a counteroffer of $8 million a year. But here's the key thing, guys. It had some stipulations, which were that Scalley would get full and final oversight in decision-making for the areas of football recruiting and player personnel staffing, and that he would have complete decision-making authority over all football recruiting, roster management, and staffing matters that impact the program beyond the 2026 football season. So basically, Kyle Whittingham would be the head coach in name only, and they would go ahead and Morgan Scalley basically takes charge of the football program. Well, clearly, they didn't want that. They end up paying Whittingham $13.5 million to just go ahead and go away. And we know what happened from there. He gets the Michigan job, and he takes several of his assistants with him. So Utah initially threatens to not pay him the $13.5 million they agreed to. They do. But Mark Harlan, the AD, writes, as you know, the university was disappointed by your actions last month. The university felt that your involvement with recruiting our football coaches and staff to Michigan was contrary to the terms of your employment agreement, which requires you to assist with a smooth and successful transition of the football program to the new coach and his coaching staff. Okay, that's a lot to take in. Bruce, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, and there were some players who ended up transferring to Michigan as well on top of that. When I read this, obviously Kyle Whittingham has done a fantastic job at Utah, and really, he took over for Urban Meyer. And I think people forget that Utah was never that good, really. I mean, Ron McBride had some success before Urban got there. Then Urban got it going in 2 years, and then Kyle Whittingham really stabilized it and built off it. But when you read this story, guys, I felt like neither guy looks good because it feels like it's Mark Harlan against Kyle Whittingham. And some of it's hard to separate, in a vacuum here, but you'd always heard for the last few years, Kyle wants to, ride off into the sunset, but he doesn't want to do it after, 4-8 or something in 2024.
Mm-hmm. 5-7.
So 5-7. Yeah. So they ended up, all right, this is a 10-win season. He can move on. And it was just going to be really messy. And then you see behind the scenes, it got really ugly, right? And I don't know. I mean, I think it's a win for Michigan. I don't know how long he's going to coach at Michigan, but given the you have to kind of separate that part, because I don't know how we look at this if the Michigan job doesn't come open, right? I mean, because all of a sudden now, Kyle Whittingham's not out for a year trying to figure out what am I doing. There's a bigger job, to be honest, at Michigan, that's some good young players there and probably, certainly better resources. So we kind of landed in a better situation. You don't have this awkwardness with he and his protege, Morgan Scalley, who was a really good player there and then was a really good defensive coordinator. But Ralph, to me, it's just like, again, I hate to use the expression, no dog in the fight, but it's like, I'm just looking at this going, man, I think both sides kind of come out looking bad in this. And I don't know, if you are a Utah fan, I don't know how you look at it through it, what lens you look at it through. But it's one of those where they got themselves in a really messy situation because the head coach in waiting almost never works out. It kind of has worked out for Ohio State and Ryan Day. It worked out to some degree with Lincoln Riley and Oklahoma for a little while, but it just seems like it's kind of a doomed situation for one reason or another.
Yeah. So my overall takeaway is, boy, these coaches who stayed a place a long time, it very rarely does it end perfectly, right?
Harmoniously.
From Bobby Bowden. Yeah. Yes. Harmoniously. There always seems to be some waves at the end, again, no matter who you look at. So I guess I'm not surprised here that this is the way it went down. What sort of jumped out to me is when you mention the salary, right? He asked for $9 million. It makes me think a little bit, and this is not a criticism of Kyle Whittingham, but like I found myself thinking, well, he was only making $6 million a year, and like that's a good salary. 6.9. So he's only making 6.97, but that's a good salary. But I also could see him thinking, boy, I'm always in the top 12 of Stu and Bruce's lists. And there's a whole bunch of guys who are not as good a coach as I am making more money than me now. Like, I mean, I think Shane Beamer's, no offense to Shane, I think Shane Beamer is making $9 million. Josh Heupel's making nine or $10 million. Like, I do wonder if you're Kyle Whittingham and you're a good coach and you're a young 66, God knows we should all be as good a shape as Kyle is at 66 years old. Even now, as good a shape as Kyle's in. Like, I can also like see him being like, wait a second, like, why am I stepping away now? And why am I not being compensated sort of like at the back end of, again, like I'm always like ahead of these guys on Stu and Bruce's list. Like why am I leaving now? But I could also understand Utah saying we've had this idea in place for a while. We talked about this when it first happened. We've had this plan in place, and the will he or won't he, like when will Kyle go? When will Whit go? Has been sort of hanging over our program. So even if we bring him back for one more year, like, is this going to be a problem? Is this just going to be an issue for us as we build rosters and try to hire coaches? So I see why Utah maybe got a little exhausted of going through that dance, but I definitely understand a guy like Whittingham going, wait a second, like, like I can still hit this fastball. And by the way, you've been sort of getting by and like you've gotten a discount on me so far, and I'm kind of tired of that.
Yeah, the thing is, the Morgan Scalley plan had been in place since 2022. So he's already waited 3 years for his turn.
At least it may have even been like there was a little while when that got a little squirrely for Morgan, and they reestablished it right around like 2020, 2021. So I mean, they've been thinking this maybe as far back as 2019 or 2020.
So he's been, well, at least you're right, but at least officially he had been waiting for 3 years. Now he's gonna have to wait a fourth, right? At what point does he say enough's enough? I'm gonna go somewhere else. So they want to make sure he stays. And I agree. The will he or won't he every year. It's funny because like we used to say that about Cam Rising every week. Is he going to play or is he not going to play? And the timing, right? He didn't tell them this in the middle of the season. He told them after the regular season had ended, before the bowl game. So those are the things where I sympathize with a little bit with Utah. Where I don't is he's the winningest coach by far in the history of your program. He wasn't going out, a lot of the ones you mentioned, like Bobby Bowden, petered out towards the end. Mac Brown petered out towards the end. He's coming off 10-2. So I think if you have a chance to retain the greatest coach in history program, you should probably do that. And of course, they didn't know at the time, because remember, Michigan opened very abruptly with Sharon Moore. They didn't know at the time they were having these conversations that that job was going to come open. In talking to Utah people at the time, I don't think they seriously entertained the possibility that Michigan would hire him. I think they thought,
even when it did come open,
Yeah,
even
I
after
think-
it did come open.
I mean, he was angling for his agent.
But
Was
there is a
angling for
weird
that
little
immediately.
wrinkle in there is a weird little wrinkle in this, as you're saying, Stu, because I think there was a lot of speculation behind the scenes in the coaching world about Sharon Moore is in trouble. Like we had heard this for a while, and then it escalated.
But why
What
would
is
Utah
interesting
know about that?
What is interesting about this is Morgan Scalley and Sharon Moore happen to have the same agent.
Yeah, I hear you, Bruce, on that. But like, I can understand Utah making its decision.
I'm just saying, why would he have come to them? Like Stu pointed this out. Why would Kyle Whittingham have come to them at such a late stage in that?
Yeah, again, though, I could understand.
Does he come to that if Michigan's not going to be an option?
Well, yeah, maybe. I think that is at least something to consider. But I can also understand from Utah's perspective, in the moment when it was happening, when they had to make when Utah had to make its decision, are we going to bring Kyle back for another year under these conditions? I can understand them not factoring in a Michigan situation, even if Kyle may have thought, well, listen, if I'm going to go, like, maybe we'll see what happens with Michigan. Like maybe that was in his mind, but I can see with Utah it not being in their minds.
But even then, like, okay, let's say everybody knew the Michigan job was going to come open. Nobody thought he was going to get it, externally at least. Like it was going to be Jed Fish. It was going to be Kalen DeBoer, right? Like there was no guarantee he was going to get that.
That's exactly it.
At the end of the day, what this creates is, and by the way, if you're Mark Harlan, you should know that stuff's going to come out eventually if it's documented somewhere. I think there was some bitterness among Utah fans when he got the Michigan job. Like, oh, he left us for a quote unquote better job. Where's your loyalty, Kyle? Blah, blah, blah. So when it comes out that
and by the way,
he took a lot of
new
people.
OC.
He
took your OC.
and some of your players.
Oh,
And
we
some
could
of
have
your
avoided all. He actually wanted us. He wanted us first, not Michigan. Who do they blame for that? The AD. So I think you're right, Bruce, that everybody comes off not great in this, right? Like, but I think overwhelmingly, and you say I read the comments too much, but I did read the comments, that it was a lot of fire Mark Harlan stuff, which I don't think is going to happen, but that's who they're siding with or siding against in this particular case.
You know what would be different? It's how well Morgan Scalley does on the job. If Morgan Scalley can lead them into the top 15 consistently, then I feel like people will say, hey, Mark Harlan made the right decision. If they go 8-4 and 7-5 and a bunch of that, then I think they'll go, maybe he screwed this all up.
That's exactly right. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the hottest recruit in America. All right, Bruce, you had a story on The Athletic Monday morning about a very unique football prospect. Tell us about him.
Yeah, his name is Neff Giwa. He literally has become like the hottest name in the recruiting world over the last week. Almost nobody had ever heard of him till early last week. And then Brandon Collier, who's a former UMass D lineman who is mostly based in Germany and over the past decade has been helping identify and develop a lot of mostly European athletes who aspire to play American football. And he's had a bunch of success. I think there was, over like 100 guys he's helped put into Division I rosters. And he had a 5-star this past year, just signed with Georgia, who's like from Sweden, who is a shot putter, who's now a D lineman at Georgia. And so he's had a bunch of these guys who really, panned out. This one is an interesting story because he is almost 6'8", 300 pounds, has 37-inch arms, which if you say that to any like football scout or especially O-line guy, they'll be like, what? Because if you have 34-inch arms, that's pretty good length. Moves really well. Was a rugby player from Ireland. Was of Nigerian descent, was born in Ireland playing soccer and rugby. And So when he started working with him, and this is not that long ago, it's basically like a month or so ago, he saw a lot of potential because Neff is really physical because of the rugby background, also having two older brothers who were like, picking on him and them doing all the WWE stuff at home, but had never really seen American football other than some highlights on YouTube and maybe caught a little of the Super Bowl highlights when he was, back in Ireland. So they come out with 7 other European prospects on one of these annual campus tours that Collier does. And they go to Ohio State. They look at him, he meets some coaches, not, kind of nothing, no offer, nothing. Goes to Kentucky, similar deal. Then they drive 12 hours to Canada. And there's a workout there that Collier puts on. And the kid didn't have Twitter or anything like that. And so Collier has him create a Twitter account, puts his, information in. They have this workout. Kid doesn't think anything of it. And then Collier posts a tweet about Neff Giwa. And in it, he embeds a 3-second video. It's only 3 seconds of him pass protecting against a defensive lineman. And all of a sudden,
no pads.
Yeah. All of a sudden, both of them start getting blown up on their DMs from football coaches. Mario Cristobal offers this kid, we want to get him down here now. 3-second video, right? And so from there, they drove another 12 hours back into the United States, went to Clemson, went to South Carolina, went to Michigan State, went to Georgia, and it has been a recruiting frenzy for this guy. And so right now, over the weekend, he was at South Carolina. He's flying to Miami tonight, or he's flying to Miami Monday night. And what's interesting about his recruiting situation too, another little subplot is Miami and South Carolina and SMU and a few other schools want him for this recruiting, for the 2026 recruiting class, so he could be there this summer and play in the fall. Georgia doesn't have space for him. There's another, I forgot what other SEC school doesn't have space for him till next year. So it's just a very interesting situation how this guy that nobody in the football world had ever heard of till about a week ago has become the hottest commodity in the recruiting world. Just like that. It really started with a 3-second video. Never played a down of American football. He's probably never watched a whole game. Now he's watched a lot of YouTube stuff now, studying offensive linemen. Jordan Mailata, starts for the Eagles. He was a rugby player in Australia. That is a role model for him. And so it's really a fascinating story in a nutshell.
Yeah. So was there a clip or a photo? Because I remember I see either
it's
a clip
both.
or a
So
photo
he's
of him actually playing rugby. But no, there's not the football clip, but a clip or a photo of him playing rugby. And he just looks, he looks like the spoof video of like the adult playing with the children, but he's playing with other adults.
Yeah,
there's a picture in Bruce's story where and I don't know anything about rugby, but he's jumping up and he looks like he's 10 feet taller than everybody else on the field.
His teammates are hoisting him up as something that happens in rugby, but he's helping propel himself up. But again, he's way bigger than everybody else out there. He's faster than most of the guys.
He's 6'8", 270, right?
6'8",
is that
295. He's almost 300 pounds.
But also like a build that looks like he looks
why would he not play tight end? And it's like, he almost 300
looks like
pounds.
a normal. I say this not to disparage offensive line.
He looks more like a power
built
forward.
like a normal person, right? Like he's not like super heavy up top. No, what I'm saying, like a lot of times these very tall guys, their limbs are kind of gangly. Yeah, like he's very proportional, and you could also see like, oh, I could easily put like 40 pounds on that guy. Like with the broad shoulders, he has not bulked up at all.
Yeah, I mean, he's almost 300 pounds. Brandon in the workout, so he has 37-inch arms. Like that's the part that's not proportional. Like that's right. Ridiculously
crazy
long.
Wingspan.
Yeah, and but he ran a 4.88.
Get him in March Madness ASAP. Yeah.
Yeah.
What a
I think
rim protector.
Yeah, again, I think some of those guys, it's not like he's 6'11", but certainly he's going to probably make a ton of money this summer from schools who are going to try to get him there now. I would expect him to make $500,000 just from because there's so many schools that are interested.
So Ralph is usually the one of the three of us who like craps all over something. I'm going to play that role right here.
Okay.
This is freaking ridiculous. I mean, and it makes me question how little vetting coaches must do. Like if you've always wondered, and look, I'm sure he's a great kid. I'm not like speculating anything negative about this kid at all. Is he a kid? How old is he?
He is
about 20,
he
right?
is 20. And so I asked Stu's question because on my Instagram account, I saw a lot of people going, that guy looks like he's 30. And he does look older than 20, to be honest. And so I asked Brandon, I was like, how do schools vet somebody that has just kind of popped up on their radar out of nowhere? Yeah. And he said, he's traveling over here. He has a passport. His birth date is on the passport. Right. Like, so but that part is explainable. Yeah. I think also, when you talk to him, I was on the phone with him for like a half hour. He is like very easy to talk to, very well spoken. I mean, again, he's born in Ireland. When you talk to him, he sounds more like he's English than has more of the Irish accent. But again, I think they have to, it's not the first international recruit that they've offered. And I think that's probably part of that process. But again, I think, Stu, what's happening, and I feel like there's two parts of your skepticism. The first part is on the vetting piece of it, is they're going to say, hey, if we don't rush to be the first in line or the second in line, we're going to miss our chance. And if something happens on the back end, we're like, ooh, sorry, we couldn't take you. We'd rather be in the position of saying, oh, this didn't work out, as opposed to we missed our chance. We were never even in the play. The other part that I thought you were going at, which is the guy's never played a down of American football. As
I'm
Ralph
going there.
said,
So it's on two fronts.
He's not in pads when you're seeing this. The one thing I will say is I sent the story to a buddy of mine who's an NFL scout, and he wrote back 2 words: great feet. And it was just like, you were betting on the traits. Dane Brugler, our friend who does terrific work as the Athletics NFL draft analyst, he was just like, this is insane to watch this guy move. And again, I think you're betting on the traits.
That 3-second clip, I'm not going to lie, was very impressive. You are offering a scholarship for 4 years of college, at least, in an American university, based on a 3-second clip of a guy who has never played football. How can we not stop and recognize the absurdity of this? It's like the combine workout warrior to the most extreme thing possible. And so then you said, oh, I think he's going to get $500,000. I wanted to bang my head on the desk.
Bang away, Stu, because
maybe he'll turn out to be great. I don't know, but what it does is it makes me question not just international prospects. How much do coaches even vet? Like when they go to a high school camp and they see a guy and offer him on the spot, like, don't tell me when you come, oh, we recruit nothing but the highest characters into our program. We talk, Urban Meyer used to be like, we talk to his family members. I like to talk to the kid at the lunch table. Hey, how does he treat you? None of that.
Talk to the janitors. Talk to the
janitors. No, we're looking at a 3-second clip of a guy who has never played football, and we offer him a scholarship. And you're right, Bruce, like you can always back out at sometimes sometimes they say is it a real offer or is it a fake offer, right? But what's different now is like you just said, like if you offer him money, that's clearly a real offer.
Yeah, I think also I think you got to see it through the lens of the portal. Like I haven't talked to enough people who were working in this space 5 years ago, but I think because of the portal, remember in the days where it's like, oh, if this kid, flunks out, it counts against your APR and you get dinged and all these other things, because so much stuff is now so transactional where you have a guy for 1 year. Like I think, Stu, you said a minute ago, you're offering him a 4-year scholarship. Yes, in theory, but if he's there for a year and it doesn't work out or whatever, for either on his end or theirs.
Toward the portal. Yeah.
Right. And so we've seen a lot of guys, bounce around, American-born players. We've certainly seen it with international players. So I think that's what we get in this day and age. But it was kind of fascinating because literally it is 3 seconds. I mean, now Brandon Collier subsequently posted a lot of videos. Like they go to Tennessee was the other school, like Georgia, who I don't think has space for him in 2026 class. So I think they offered him. He went up there and visited there. And you got to keep in mind, they can't work him out when they're up there. Like I think they can measure him, but there's a lot of other stuff, and they can certainly obviously eyeball them. But the workout stuff is really going on when he's up against other guys similar to him who are international players, Canadian players, or whoever.
Relatively novice players too. So 2 quick things. I think Brandon Collier a little better than I do, but he's well known within the business. And I do think that he brings enough kids to schools that there's to sort of cite one of the things you mentioned, Stu. I think there's a certain comfort level of like, this guy, we know this guy, he's probably going to vet the kids a little bit, and we know he's not going to necessarily, sell us a bill of goods. So there's a little bit of that of trust level of somebody you're dealing with. The other thing, though, is football is the easiest sport. This is what my takeaway of this is. Football really is the easiest sport. Like baseball, you can't pick a guy up at 20 years old and say, hit this curveball. And you have to be able to skate. In hockey and in basketball, shooting takes thousands of hours to get good at. You can learn how to shoot, and guys are good prospects who learn how to shoot and they get better, but there's a lot of that. Football really is a sport where I can teach you. Come here, you have all the traits, you have all the athleticism, give me a year, I'll teach you how to play. And if you have the athleticism that is needed to play at a really high level, and I can get you on the right diet and teach you all the stuff, it's not fine motor skills in the same way it is with the other sports. So I do think as much as I love football and it's a great sport and it's this, it's that, it really is, I think, speaks to the idea that generally speaking, it's probably the easiest sport to teach and learn to a certain degree.
It's such a trait-specific thing, right? Because I remember one of our, parent friends here where we live, the dad played, he didn't play high school football, but he was a wrestler. And then he went to Purdue. I think he was a walk-on and ended up being the starting center when Drew Brees was there. And then Nick Hardwick spent 10 years starting for the Chargers at center and now as an O-line coach. And the wife was a soccer player at Canada. And she once said something to me, which I was like, I've never heard that, but that makes a ton of sense. And she said along the lines of football, probably doesn't prepare you for the other sports, but the other sports prepare you for football, kind of thing, whether you're track or soccer or volleyball or whatever. Whereas you could be a great football player, but it may, it's probably not going to help you in baseball necessarily. It's probably not going to help you in those other, maybe the training part of it would, but it's the other sports feed into that better than that feeds into the other sports.
All right. In other college football news, also late last week on Friday, because it was the same day as the Whittingham news, President Trump issued an executive order which would require the Army-Navy game to remain where it is on the second Saturday in December in an exclusive TV window. Nobody else can play a football game opposite of it. Ralph, you were following this pretty closely.
Yeah, well, I was when President Trump first mentioned that he was going to do this, and last week I wasn't quite as much on top of it because I was in Buffalo covering basketball. But first of all, I don't know if that's legal. If it's legal, I don't know if he legally, an executive order aside, I don't know if he legally can protect Army Navy's time slot and force the networks to work around it in the CFP. Aside from that, the bigger discussion here is this idea that what are we going to do with this game? Right? I think it's cool that it has its own time spot, but I think also hey, Army Navy, do you want to be part of the playoff? Because the funny thing about Army Navy and where they are now is I think when they first joined the American, there was a lot of skepticism about, well, they'll probably won't win the American that often. So it's okay. It's a funky structure. They play a non-conference game after the conference season in between the championship games and the playoff. It's weird, but it will work out because, hey, it's just Army Navy. But the fact of the matter is, like, the American ain't what it used to be. Army Navy, both of those schools the last couple of years have contended for the American title. So, again, like, you can't really have your cake and eat it too here. Like, do you want to be part of the playoff? Do you want to have your own day? And I just think that to a certain degree, everybody's talked about, like, well, could we build the playoff around Army Navy and have a couple of games that weekend? And then if Army Navy are in the playoff, which is weird because they would be selected to the playoff the week before they play each other. That doesn't seem straight. So there's just I think there is a legitimate, what are we going to do about this game? We want to be respectful to it. The last thing I'll say, Stu, is it hasn't always been on its own day in its own time
People
spot.
act like it's been this way for 100 years.
No, it's been about 25 years that it's been here, and it's cool. It's definitely, like, we've grown up with it to a certain degree, grown up in terms of our adulthood, or in terms of when we were covering college sports. But I don't know, man, like, it doesn't have to be this way. But I do think like, more and more, it needs to be thought about, like, seriously. What are we going to do with this game?
I mean, I still think I came up with a great idea to have it on New Year's Day. We got to, once we get to our senses and move the playoff schedule up so that the semifinals are on New Year's Day, not the quarterfinals, that it would be the greatest triple header you could have. Army Navy at noon, Rose Bowl at 4, Sugar Bowl at 8. Or whatever.
You're going exactly the wrong way, Stu. Like, they are going to be be here.
Yeah,
like, we have to consider
they're not going to make the
that.
semifinals.
They're not going to make the semifinal. But you're going to
have them in the playoff, and then all of a sudden they're going to have this exhibition game now. Like, to me, that doesn't make any sense.
Not an exhibition game. It's Army Navy. You could. It doesn't matter whether it impacts the playoff or not. It's the biggest deal in the world to those two schools. People love it. It's great pageantry. And so I'm saying, yes,
there has to be a better solution than that, Stu.
Make sure they have.
But you can't have them potentially play a playoff game and then play Army Navy.
Why not? They're not going to make the semis. So if we go to this huge, enormous tournament they're talking about,
what happens if they do?
Well, no, that's unlikely. I am with Stu there. I'm not worried about that.
They're not. That would be like planning the NCAA tournament around the possibility that UMBC is going to make the Final Four. Like, we can't, common sense, right?
I don't think that's common sense, too.
Well, my point is, if President Trump's, because what's the reasoning for this? He wants it to have the maximum spotlight. Do you realize there's no better spotlight than that? Like, I think 10 million people, or maybe it's more like 8, 9 million people watch the Army-Navy game where it is. You put it leading into the semifinals of the playoff, 20 million people watch it.
I got a better idea for that. You want the maximum spotlight? Now, this will not sit well with real big money people. Tell them they're getting the Thanksgiving night, Thursday night game. NFL can't have it. So you're going to have 2 NFL games lead into Army Navy. That'll get the maximum spotlight.
Oh, you want the even more maximum spot? Lead into the Super Bowl. Lead into the Super Bowl.
That's a little too late. That's a little too late.
It would be for any other college football teams, but it's not like their guys are preparing for the draft. So
no, you can't do it.
Why not?
You can't do it.
You don't. Ralph, what do you think about Thanksgiving night?
We got to figure out.
I don't mind Thanksgiving night. That does make some sense to me. And again, count it as a conference game. Yeah, count it as a conference game, Thanksgiving night. But again, like, there needs to be some actual thought to the idea that, like, they are now positioned to contend in this conference more than they were when they first entered the conference, because the way G5 football has gone. So I think there needs to be some serious discussion.
Can they actually play on a weekday night? A weeknight?
Why not?
Sure, you could. Yeah, why not? They play at a neutral site.
Tell Roger Goodell you got to give up their Thanksgiving night.
Jeff Monken himself proposed Thanksgiving weekend, right?
So
I think it would maybe have to be Black Friday. The NFL is not giving up Thursday night.
The NFL has Black Friday too now still.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll solve this sometime between now and Tony Petitti's 2014 playoff going into effect. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk flag football.
All right, the last thing we want to get to today is, in some ways, inside baseball. The reason why I was in Buffalo is because our very good Buffalo Bills writer with The Athletic, Tim Graham, was in Los Angeles covering a flag football tournament, Bruce. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, flag football's coming to the Olympics. The NFL has gotten very much behind flag football as a way, not necessarily like to bring more fans into the game, not necessarily to build the game from an interest standpoint, right? Because it's a more accessible game. And there was a huge flag football tournament in Los Angeles that involved Tom Brady and Joe Burrow. And I thought it was ridiculous, but I don't know. I think people watched it. And what did you think, Bruce?
Yeah, I was one of those who watched a lot of it. I mean, it went on way longer than I thought it was going to go. It started at 1 p.m. Pacific, and I think went to like 4:30 or 5 o'clock. It was like 4 hours. It was longer than an NFL game.
Yeah.
And it was originally supposed to be, I believe, in Saudi Arabia, but because of issues going on, it got moved to one of the soccer stadiums in Los Angeles. It had a lot of stars from the NFL. You mentioned Tom Brady, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts. You had Saquon. You had a bunch of receivers. You also had this other side plot made it a little screwier to me. Was there were two social media people or YouTubers. One was Logan Paul. Called, right? The other one was iShowSpeed. If you have kids, your kids probably know who iShowSpeed is. He's really fast, but he's a YouTuber. And Bud Crawford, who is a former championship boxer, but not a football player. And so they played against basically our national team that you would think will be in the Olympics competing in 2028 in Los Angeles. And, a handful of those guys had played in college football. The most prominent was a receiver at Texas Tech, Jadian High, who was a solid player, not like a star in Lubbock, but I think he had 5 touchdowns in the game. So the way it worked, it was there was two teams of mostly NFL stars, and as well as this one team of pro flag football players. And the way going in, I saw people kind of processing this is like pros versus Joes, that old Spike TV show that Petros used to host, which was like a fascinating kind of carnival circus show, whatever. And in the end, after you watched it, if you watched any of it, you're like, yeah, this is like pros versus Joes, except the pros are the guys you've never heard of, and the Joes are actually the guys who made tens of millions of dollars in the NFL. But they're playing a sport that, even though it has a football and it's a little smaller than the football they use in the NFL, it's way different because a lot of the plays are different. And so the coaches for the NFL guys were Sean Payton and as well as Kyle Shanahan, obviously brilliant X and O's guys, but it's way different. And I think what we saw, if you were watching, was offensively, the NFL guys could make a bunch of big plays because they can throw and catch. But what they couldn't do was make anybody miss. And what the other team had, which had mostly smaller, much quicker, and guys who do what's called like the dip, where it looks like some version of a limbo, where guys are reaching to grab their flag and they're grabbing armpits because these other guys drop their hips so low, they're almost hanging off the ground. And it's fascinating to see the highlights. And I think people looked at it and go, okay, this is kind of like 7-on-7, because 7-on-7, you don't have pads and it's a more wide open field, except 7-on-7, if you've seen it played either in tournament form or what they do in college is it's basically one hand touch. That's not what this is. You're trying to pull a flag, and it is way harder to do that than to tag somebody. And certainly, the NFL team had some retired players and players at the end of, like Luke Kuechly is a Hall of Fame player. But him chasing these guys who weigh 75 pounds less than him in open field at this stage is not a great thing. And Logan Paul, who was not even a college football player, is out there rushing and trying to do this. It was just kind of like, it was interesting, but I think it was kind of mind blowing for people who are like, oh, these NFL guys are just going to come in here and dominate these guys who never could have gotten within a sniff of the NFL.
Yeah. So the big thing here is, again, there is the interesting part about the actual football, right? The actual football that's being played. And as you said, like the dynamic between, what is real football and and why the pros can't just come in. I think they wanted to. My sense of this is it's an event to just sort of like raise the identity of the game and build up some excitement for it and get people interested in it. Because if I just say Tom Brady football, Logan Paul, people will show up and watch, right?
Or at least they'll tune in. They didn't show up and watch because it was hot out here. There was a pretty empty stadium, but they tuned in.
Yeah. But tune in. That's what I mean. Show up and tune in. And the other part of it is, again, a little thing. I think what you were saying is like, I think when we announce, flag football is going to be in the Olympics. We should bring Justin Jefferson and all these guys. No. There are people out there already training for this sport. It's a very different sport. We shouldn't bring a bunch of NFL guys. So maybe this also nips that in the bud a little bit. Like, hey, man, like, just don't think that you guys can show up here and take our spots, right? I do think the broader thing, though, is this idea of the NFL really getting behind flag football as a vehicle to reaching younger fans,
especially women and girls, and that has done it a lot. I've been tracking this stuff for a few years.
The issue with the decline in tackle football participation is not a player issue. There will always be enough players. There will always be enough players to fill the league. It's a little bit of the NFL understanding that very long term we have to be a little worried, or not worried, but cognizant of the idea that, like, if not enough people are playing our sport, they might not be fans of our sport when they get older still.
So here's the thing. Here in California, as Bruce knows, and I don't know how many other states this is the case, but women's flag football is a recognized high school sport. There's a state championship, all of that. So my question is, why is the Olympics a men's flag football? Like, it seems to me, if the motivation behind that maybe in some ways was to get the NFL players, and if that's not going to happen, why don't we have a girls team? Because,
I think they'll have a women's team, Stu, because it's women's flag is really, and girls flag football is really big here in the United States. The international
I don't know
teams,
if there's big elsewhere.
I think it's a little bit like we as a country were way ahead of teams, or where we were stronger was in women's soccer as opposed to men's soccer, because I think internationally they weren't dominant the way they are in men's soccer. And I think there's some of that right now in the girls' side of it right now. I know this, like, my son does 7-on-7 and flag, and there's a little bit, like, I don't want to say they're interchangeable. You play, he goes and plays in a tournament. You don't know. It may be a 7-on-7 tournament where the field's wider, or it may be a flag tournament, which the field's a little more narrow and it has flags and the rules are different, so it's just, I think it can be very confusing. I know when I was trying to explain it to Stu offline a little bit, I get it. If you haven't seen it, or if you haven't been involved in it, it is a little bit hard to figure out. I think for people who probably have only seen it, online and haven't had any connection to it, I think they probably have a lot of misconceptions about it too.
I know what flag football is. I got a little confused because you kept bringing up 7-on-7, and now I get it. You were saying, like, it's not like 7-on-7. By the way, I made the same exact mistake these NFL players made about somewhere between 15 and 20 years ago when I was still a bachelor in New York, right? They have this great co-ed recreational. Why are you both shaking your head? I'll tell you.
Because as soon as you said bachelor in New York, we started to get a
where this is going.
Come on, in my
baby.
pre-married life, when I lived in New York,
okay,
I did. It's called Zog Sports. It does. Maybe you've heard of it, Ralph, because you are in New York, right? Well, I guess you've been married for too long. Basically, it's a good way for singles people to play like co-ed sports, and that's where I played softball, and I loved my softball experience. But they offered other sports as well, like dodgeball. So I'm like, oh, they have flag football. I know how to play football, and I won't get tackled. This sounds like a good idea. It was not a good idea. First of all, you have to run for, whatever, it's 2 straight hours. I was not in condition to do that. And like, to your point, Bruce, trying to grab somebody's flag for me was not that different than like trying to catch my cat's tail. It's just not going to, it's never going to happen. Right. So I had to bail. It was a disaster. But back to serious for a second. So I would think if we're in agreement, the NFL player, it's not going to happen. They're not going to be able to train themselves in the next 2 years to become elite flag football players because they have other things to do. If I'm a college player right now, though, if I'm maybe a senior and I'm not good enough to play in the NFL, but I'm a good enough athlete to be a college football starting player, do I spend the next 2 years? Do I graduate and then spend the next couple of years going full bore in flag football to possibly play in the Olympics?
Yeah, maybe. I could see that being a path now for some college guys, if especially the smaller guys. As you said, that seems to be the proper body type, right? Slot receiver seems to be the way to go there.
It's funny because if I had said to anybody, any Texas Tech diehard football fan, and said, hey, there's a former Texas Tech player who's really good on the U.S. national flag football team, I think they would have said, oh, Jakeem Grant, because he's just what you guys just said. He is super, he's tiny, but super quick. JD on high, he was a good player, but he wasn't like one of their 3 or 4 best receivers. And it's not like he was, but he, I think there are different roles on the team. I'll say this, like you could see highlights. Odell Beckham Jr., who last played in the NFL like a year ago, or a season and a half ago, made a spectacular one-handed catch. You saw some, the receivers, if you have a big receiver, whether it was Devontae Adams, you could still see like Gronk played on the Brady team until he like hurt his hamstring or pulled his groin. After I want to say he had like maybe a 2-point catch and had a first down. Like if you have a big receiver, that can be of value because they're a hard matchup. And the other thing that's different about this is it's not like you can press and jam them. So the rules of physicality definitely don't play into it. Like there was a lot of penalties on the NFL guys because I think they're still acclimating to the rules and some of their instincts kind of kick in. So it's like I said, it's interesting. And what you said about maybe some standout college players, like I was sitting there watching, and you kind of go through this. And I'm like, man, Deuce Vaughn probably would be pretty good in this, because he's a low center of gravity. And he's obviously super quick. He's kicked around the NFL for a little bit, but I'm sure there's other guys who probably weren't big and physical enough, but also super quick who probably, maybe Division III players or Division II players who maybe looked at this and go, you know what? I wouldn't mind getting a gold medal.
If the key is to be short and fast and athletic, let me ask you this. Would Muggsy Bogues have been the greatest flag football player in history? Nobody would be able to catch his flag. I don't know if he was
elusive enough. I don't know. I don't know. Like, was he elusive enough in basketball? Maybe.
All right, we're going to come back later this week with another episode. It's the episode where we always answer your mailbag questions, which you can send to theaudiblepod@gmail.com. We have a special request this week. If you happen to be a Utah fan and are listening to this, or if you maybe know some Utah fans who might listen or might want to listen to it, we are very curious your opinion on the Whittingham Utah divorce. Which side do you side with? So send those emails as well, theaudiblepod@gmail.com. We'll see you next time.